And so now you had two sort of fledgling organizations, both vying for that opportunity to be the International Federation, and there just wasn't really anything happening. It was a lot of wheel spinning from our standpoint. And Jen can probably speak to this. It was Pickleball Australia and Pickleball Canada that took the initiative to form a task force to get the two groups at least communicating. And unfortunately, there wasn't an appetite really at that time to make that even happen. You didn't want to have to start a third one, but I think, sometimes you have to take that step. We need to really have a true international federation that has participation rampant.
Hello, welcome to the Future of Pickleball. This is the show on Selkirk TV where we get a chance to talk to the serious people in the sport of pickleball. I've got two guests today that have been instrumental in building and developing international pickleball. Let's start off with Miss Jen Ramamurthy. She is the General Secretary of the Global Pickleball Federation. She is the Oceania Continental Director. She is the chairman of the board of Pickleball Australia. Jen, welcome to the show.
Hi, Paul. Thanks for having me.
And then we have Justin Maloof, who is the chief operating officer of USA Pickleball. And Justin was the first employee that was ever hired by USA Pickleball. And maybe back in that day was at USA PA, but he was hired as the executive director, has seen it all in pickleball. Welcome to both of you to the show.
Thanks, Paul. Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Before we get started, I do want to send a thank you to Selkirk TV for allowing me and enabling me to meet with people like you to talk about where the sport is going and how it's getting there. If you're watching this and you like the kind of content that we're bringing, please hit the like and subscribe button. Let's get started. I want to discuss a couple of topics with you guys about, first of all, how did the vision of creating Global Pickleball, how did that come about? Justin, you were there in the beginning. Tell me about it.
Yeah, really the origin, I think, for the first International Federation was a vision of the original USA Pickleball board. So it was back in 2010 that they started the International Pickleball Federation, or IFP at the time. And it was the vision there was the understanding that if the sport is going to grow globally, it's not going to be branded USA Pickleball, right? It's got to be a true international federation. So that was the vision. There was a website, some bylaws that were created, but that was really back in USAP's kind of origins as well. So the priority for the organization was focused more nationally. So we had it. But it wasn't really active. So it was around 2014 or so, maybe 3-4 years after it was officially launched, that it actually did get active. We had Canada and India that were involved early on. And that was kind of the origin. Like I said, it was didn't gain much traction early on. It was tough to coordinate time zones and meetings. And of course, those organizations were, in their infancy as well. So there wasn't a lot happening really with that organization. And then it was, a few years later, maybe 2018, 2019, kind of that time frame where, some additional countries were added. But again, it just never really materialized, never developed into a full functioning, active, board with, voting members and things like that. And then in that time frame, we had a second entity that popped up. And so now you had two sort of fledgling organizations, both vying for that opportunity to be the international federation, and there just wasn't really anything happening. It was a lot of wheel spinning from our standpoint, and I think it was really, and Jen can probably speak to this, it was Pickleball Australia and Pickleball Canada that took the initiative to form a task force to get the two groups at least communicating. And unfortunately, there wasn't an appetite really at that time to make that even happen. So it was like, you didn't want to have to, in essence, start a third one. But I think, sometimes you have to take that step. And so that's really what happened in 2022 with the US and Canada, Australia, some of the larger pickleball organizations that just said, look, we need to really have a true international federation that has participation for everybody. So that's really how this thing got started.
For those of you that are watching, Jen Ramamurthy, who is sitting here, is in Australia as we're talking to her. Very late at night for her and very early in the morning for Justin and I. It's kind of an interesting challenge. But Jen, give us a little bit of an idea as to how instrumental Australia and then Oceania has been in the creation, development of GPF.
Well, I think moving from where Justin left off, the initial step for Pickleball Australia was trying to get some clarity around what was happening in the IF space, which was why we initially approached the two organisations to try and talk and merge and see if we could get to a space where we had a single IF. The reason that is important for Australia, and I know for many other countries, is that we have what's called the Australian Sports Commission. And that Australian Sports Commission are the ones that provide us with recognition as a national governing body. One of their criteria is that there is a single preeminent international entity that is governing the sport. And so without the presence of that entity, Pickleball Australia cannot then get recognition. So we're caught because along with that recognition comes access to funding, access to grants, access to everything in the integrity space around game manipulation and drugs and everything that monitors and ensures athletes are doing what needs to be done. So that really drove us to get involved in the international space.
So
alongside that.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to jump in on you.
That's all right, Paul.
One of the things that I found very interesting, having been around the sport a pretty long time, is I've seen all of the announcements, the conversation, the talk, if you will. But it wasn't until I began to really see what the GPF was doing as it was organized that I personally, as an observer of the sport, said, oh my goodness, we finally got the organization that seems to be organized and put together. How did things take off when you guys sort of got together with Canada and the US, Jen? How did that start to turn into what it is today, a large organization that's international? How does that come about technically?
Well, I think it was more than our three organizations, and I think that was a key part of it. Because there were other countries that were involved, you could see immediately that you were going to get an international perspective rather than it being a North American perspective. And, North America are the big brother in this sport. And the challenge is making sure that the rest of the world is being brought along in a sport where North America is just so far ahead. And because it started earlier. For example, Australia, really 2018, I discovered the sport here in Australia, and it was in its very, very granular stages. We established Pickleball Australia in 2020. Now, by then, Canada and America had been going full bore, and I think it was about when pro pickleball really started taking off in the States was when we were actually just starting to form as a sport in any way, shape, or form. So I think part of it was having other countries involved, and the other part of it was looking at the vision of trying to have continental federations and actually working to establish some continental federations to help on the ground in the different regions with recruitment of countries and improving the conduit of information and the flow and the communication between the countries around the whole world. I think the other key thing was one foci of the bylaws in American terms. One of the key things was to have that representation coming immediately from across the world. So there was an Oceania representative, there was a representative from Africa, and from each of the 5 continental regions. And that I think was the crux of what probably drove GPF forward quickly on a global scale.
You know, for my listeners, would you just expand a little bit on what Oceania is and what it means?
Oceania is a giant body of water with a heap of tiny islands in it, all attempting to communicate. We are the largest region, so to speak, although we are spread over an enormous area. We have countries like, obviously, Fiji, Tonga, Samoa, American Samoa, Guam, Palau, Northern Marianas, as well as New Zealand, Australia, Papua New Guinea, Cook Islands. Our big challenge is trying to develop a connection between those countries. You know, we're so far apart, traveling between them is exceedingly difficult and very expensive. So the key focus for Oceania at the moment is simply communication and bringing people on and supporting people to start developing pickleball in their region. Cook Islands is a great example. They've just joined us in the last couple of months, and they had 6 people playing, and within 2 weeks they had 80 people playing this sport.
Very nice.
So, but they're never going to be huge populations. They're
Sure.
never going to have millions.
You know, Justin, when Jen makes some interesting points where obviously the origins, the beginnings of pickleball all came first in the United States, quickly expanded into Canada. How do you see the structure and organization as a worldwide organization where you are on the board of the GPF and you also are involved with USA Pickleball? How do you see it all coming together?
Well, what I see is really an advantage for all of these countries, all these new countries, to take advantage of a lot of the groundwork that was laid here in the U.S. by USA Pickleball and other, the early organizations like Pickleball Canada. We've got resources, right? We've had opportunities to do things to help grow the game here in the U.S. We have a tremendous ambassador network here in the U.S. And a lot of those folks have they've put on paper like best practices, right? And then they would share here in the U.S. in our ambassador network things that were successful in their areas, right? How they were growing the game, how they were getting pickleball into schools, and how they were growing it in the 55 plus communities and whatnot, and how they were converting tennis courts and basketball courts and whatnot. So through a lot of that information, we as USA Pickleball and Canada and Australia, we're bringing resources to the table, right? I look at it, most of these countries are 10, 15 years behind where we are right now as USA Pickleball, but there's no reason why those countries are going to need 10, 15 years to catch up because of the resources and the information and the best practices that we're able to bring to the table. So that's something that we are actually in the process of launching this week is a full-blown resource page for member countries where they're going to be able to access all of that information, for growing, youth pickleball, senior pickleball, just introductory clinics, things of that nature. So we're going to give them the sort of the keys, and then it'll be kind of up to them to run it. But we're going to be there, as a resource and a reference to help them along the way.
That frankly encapsulates what really caught my attention as a reporter of the sport and things going on, and having been very involved, because I think I came into the sport about the time that you did, Justin, and so tremendous things have happened and changed. but it's been amazing to me to see it, particularly as you describe how far a smaller emerging country might be, but how do we narrow the gap? I look at what's going on in the Philippines and in Vietnam that 2 and 3 years ago, they were really just starting to get going. And from what I'm hearing, they're blowing up. And so, I think that really is the story of the GPF that has gotten my attention, is that you seem to have been able to organize and bring people together, do the staffing necessary to actually be and operate as a global organization. Tell me a little bit about staffing, though. And not only we know that USA Pickleball has an enormous organization and staff. Jen, is there a staffing component to what's going on with Oceania or Australia? And what is happening other parts of the world?
Oceania, no. Other than Australia. Australia, we've got 10 employees now, and we're growing quite quickly. But Oceania, not yet. There just isn't the capacity, there isn't the numbers of people, and there isn't the money. So that's where Australia has to take a really strong leading role in Oceania to support their development. And that's inclusive of New Zealand, who are a much smaller country than us in population. And a good example of what the Global Pickleball Federation is doing, one of them is the officiating space. So there is a GPF officiating committee who are connected across the different regions, and there's a lot going on in that space for the development of officials in other countries. So, for example, in Oceania, our head official here in Australia is also on this GPF committee, but he has met with the Oceania countries, and we're looking at how we can roll out what we do in Australia across to the rest of the region and ensure that it's at a standard that's acceptable on the international level. So that sort of collaboration and cooperation is vital for the development of this sport. And it's something that is also in the spirit of what pickleball is about. I think that's probably one of the most important things people tend to forget, that the spirit of pickleball is this social, welcoming, collaborative space, and that's why it's loved. And we have to remember to try and maintain that as we build and grow and not get too caught up in the top-end, professional, high-end space. It's about the grassroots. It's about all the individuals playing on a court anytime, anywhere. And that's what I think is important.
Well, and I couldn't agree with you more. In the recent past, I have had both Ron Ponder, who has traveled a lot in the officiating instructional space, and I had the 4 recommended coaching teaching certification programs that GPF is working with, because I, like you, I believe absolutely that we need that uniformity, that our game flourishes best when it's uniform across the world. And so I love what the things that you're doing there. Now, something that has come up in conversations that I've had quite a bit is things like, what is the governance of the GPF? My understanding, and I looked at the website prior to coming on, is there's a phase 1 and a phase 2 part of the program. Can you guys tell me a little bit about how that manifests itself and what that really means? Justin, why don't you jump on that one?
Sure. Yeah. No. Absolutely. So the phase 1 was really that was an appointed board, right? It was a starting point. You've got to you got to start somewhere. We didn't have a lot of countries formed or had joined or whatnot. So the phase 1 was really the foundational phase of the organization. From day one, we did want to make sure that we did have continental representation. So that's why you see the continental federations that have been formed. So we've got continental representation of the 15 members of the board. You've got 5 individuals that are representing those continents, and then we had two representatives from USAP. 2 representatives from Pickleball Canada, and then we had 6 at-large board members who brought some level of expertise to the organization, again, from a foundational standpoint. So that was really to ensure that the organization was able to form and launch and begin to operate with representation. And then those individuals that were added for at large, those are in areas of like membership and marketing and things of those nature. So without staffing, at this stage, it is very much a working board. So that was really the intent behind the phase one. We're now moving into phase two, and I would say that we're moving into that phase quicker than what we initially anticipated. But that is because the organization has grown. Our member countries, Jen, is at 66 at this point? 67 dedicated countries to the GPF. So we're moving to phase two, and phase two, is it November? November, at the end of year AGM, there will be elections, and then you'll see where we'll always have the 5 continental federation representatives, but we're moving to 10 at-large members that will be comprised of representatives from A-level countries.
I want to take a quick moment to tell you about something new in pickleball. We have all been ghosted in the pickleball group chat. Now here's a way to fix that. Get the Play More Pickleball app. We're trying to get some pickleball in, so you send out a message to the group. A few people like the message, but what does that mean? Will they actually show up? And what kind of players are they? Will you have enough people for doubles? Play More is the new pickleball app that does the frustrating part for you. It will send smart invitations to play. You can easily see who's RSVP'd, and then you can use the AI matchmaking tool to balance your games. That means no more 5-0 versus 3-0 matchups. The best part, it's free. Find it in the App Store or use the web version at getplaymore.com. Playmore is the most stress-free scheduling app in pickleball. Now let's get back to the show. So now then, Jen, my understanding from my spies, that I have spies everywhere, and my spies tell me that you are an authority on how the bylaws have been structured, kind of what the 501c3 nonprofit has been about. And I'm going to kind of put a couple of these together, board voting and then potentially fundraising. How have you been involved in, and what has been the goal and objective of the governing structure of the GPF to serve the world?
Paul, do you want to rephrase that?
Okay, I'm sorry. Jen, my understanding is that you're a real authority on the governing structure of the GPF. How did you go about setting the structure to be able to have the world served as pickleball expands?
Yeah, I don't know that I'm an expert. I think probably what I am is that if there is a set of bylaws written, first off, it's making sure that we follow them to the letter, and making sure that we are actually doing what we say we're going to do. The initial bylaws that have been written have been set up with the different phases, and part of the purpose behind having the appointed board at the beginning is to be able to then, as we move forward and as we watch how the space grows, is to be able to look at those bylaws and work out what needs to be adjusted to make it work better for all member countries and for all countries, so that they feel like they're getting a fair representation and that they have a voice. And I think that's probably the most important thing as we move forward, is that the board all recognise that it's important that our member countries have a voice. However, that voice that they have is limited by their capacity, their size, and what they bring to the table. What we want first off is that every country has a voice. But obviously, when you have, forgive me, Fiji, 20 or 40 people in Fiji having a say and I can say Fiji because they don't actually have an organization yet, but you don't, they're not going to have the same voice or the same expertise or the same understanding and knowledge as a country like, say, Mexico, that's established, has a large membership base, has been running and developed for a long time. So what we need to do is make sure that the criteria around the voice that they have is transparent and based on a mechanism that allows countries to continue to grow and to continue to increase their voice, based on what they bring to the table. So I think that's the big part in that governance space, is that every country is going to have a voice, but that voice will differ slightly based on what they bring.
Yeah, and I think it's so important to think in those terms, because where I've had an opportunity to talk to a lot of national leaders and local leaders in countries around the world, sometimes we're talking about some of the European countries. We love that they're in the sport, but they may only have 1,000 members in their national organization, and they're very, very early stage in getting going. We need the leadership of the world to be done by the people that really know how to run it. So I've been following that in conversations that I've had with any number of different people in the global space. It caused me to download all of the bylaws from every organization that ever said it wanted to do something. And it's remarkable how efficient and how effective the GPF has done it. So that's why I've become a big fan. Something I'd like to switch off to now is I'd like to talk a little bit about how the GPF is working with these small emerging countries to help them grow their sport and grow awareness nationally. Either one of you, guys, jump in.
Yeah, I can take that. Well, we started last year with an equipment program. That was one of the first things that we heard loud and clear from member countries, is that a lot of them need access to equipment. So that was one of our early objectives. We were able to get a sponsor, and unfortunately, that hasn't materialized as we anticipated. So happy to report, though, we have a new source, and we have a committee that's working diligently to get that equipment flowing. So again, that is a priority for our organization. Is we want to make sure that there is equipment available and accessible to all member countries, whether that's through donation, whether that's through just the ability to purchase at discount prices, shipping, logistics, you name it. There's all kinds of challenges that are out there for some of these countries, and the game's just never going to take off if they don't have access to the equipment. So if any of the other manufacturers are out there at Selkirk, and hey, GPF, we will gladly work with you guys to help us get equipment into these emerging countries. So that's one. I think I touched on the resources. That is critical, so that these countries don't have to reinvent the wheel and try to figure things out on their own. Right? We're going to give them resource materials, best practices on how to get the game launched and growing in their country. Also, we touched on officiating a little bit. That's a huge one, right? That is something that it took a while, even here in the U.S. Even when I came in, there was no officiating program. The officials were the players, and with the development and the network of referees and the credentialing program that we've established, we're bringing that to the world through GPF, because, as Jen mentioned, having consistent standards with rules and officiating is critical. So we're ensuring that the member countries have access to the referee materials, and we're doing it through taking really a continental approach to that as well, because we as USA Pickleball, we can't provide oversight globally from that perspective. And we talk about maintaining standards. It's one thing to just hand over materials and say, okay, here you go. But we also have to ensure that the standards are being maintained. So how the referees are initially trained, how they're evaluated, and how they're eventually credentialed. We have to ensure that, that those credentials are standardized, because as more and more international competitions arise, and we have officials coming from all over the globe, we have to ensure that a level 2 credentialed referee, from one country is the same, from a quality standpoint as they are from another country. So we need the continental federations, right, that can help with the oversight to ensure that those standards are being maintained.
I remember when I had Ron Ponder on and we talked about exactly that subject, and what a cool moment we're beginning to arrive at in global pickleball, where an American referee certified could go to a foreign country, but also a foreign country's referee that's certified could come to America on a vacation and choose to do some refereeing and be involved in a tournament in America or anywhere in North America. Is such a cool moment that's getting ready to happen. I've been involved in tennis as a child. I learned to play the game, and one of the things that always impressed me was how there was no difference in any part of the rules between India, between England, between any other place in the world. It was the same game, and I know how critical that is. Jen, would you take a moment and just kind of lay out maybe what you feel the timeline is for how these things that we've been talking about all will begin to kind of show themselves over the next few months or years?
I think that the next 6 months is going to be a really interesting time frame. Obviously, we've mentioned the coach endorsement program, and we're now starting to connect those different programs with different countries, and they're getting quite excited about that connection. And we can start to encourage appropriate coach development to occurring at a reasonable rate, so that we start getting the coaches out there. Once you've got coaches or people who can at least introduce the sport, you've then got the capacity for that sport to grow in the country. So you're going to start seeing some growth in that grassroots level of play. I think that we are in the process of reviewing our bylaws to make sure that they grow appropriately as the organization changes and grows. And I think that that's going to be really invaluable in the next 6 months. How long is it going to take us to get to the end? That's a challenge. Obviously, the ultimate goal of an international federation is to get that recognition at the AIMS IOC level. From the moment of intent to do that with your first application, it can be up to a 4-year process. So it's not a short thing. What we have to do, though, is just continually be growing and developing the various different sporting spaces that exist, trying to work collaboratively with all the different organizations that are springing up everywhere. And I'm not just talking national governing bodies, but all in the pro space and the tournament space. How we bring everybody together and we work towards trying to make a really unified sport where people collaborate. And I know I'm a bit of an idealist and I can continue to dream, but it's going to take years. I'm hoping in the next 6 to 18 months, we have a really strong, established set of programs, equipment program, officiating program, coaching support program, and obviously sponsorship and partnerships, business partnerships, that occurs in the next 6 to 18 months. Justin, do you think that's probably a reasonable start of a timeline goal?
I think so. Yeah, no, I share that. This is a lot of times, anytime anybody talks to me about international pickleball, the first thing you want to talk about is Olympics. When are we going to see, pickleball in the Olympics? And while that is an end goal for sure, the challenge and where our focus right now as GPF is truly on the grassroots. I think we've shared some of the challenges and the fact that okay, we've got 67 member countries, and that's great, but a vast majority of them are in their infancy. I mean, they're just getting started. So I think what we are seeing is the talent for pickleball is growing globally, right? And I give credit to those to the pro tours that are attracting that top talent with prize money and sponsorship opportunities and TV exposure, and that's great. So we're seeing top athletes that are gravitating to pickleball, and these athletes are coming from all over the world, and that's exciting and that's fantastic. The challenge, however, is that those countries are not in a position because they don't have the infrastructure, they don't have staff, they don't have the ability to support a national team. And it goes beyond just the athletes, right? I mean, it's the entire delegation. It's the team doctors, it's the nutritionists and the therapists and the coaches, and all that goes into top level international competition. That's why it is so critical, first that we establish the base. We get these countries, established with the tools that they need to grow the game, to get their base established so that they're able to start, running larger tournaments, start generating revenue, start adding staff, so they can reach that space where they need to be as a national federation in order to support their national team. So that's really our where our focus is right now. It's not so much on the international competition as it is right now on the grassroots.
Yeah, it's about empowerment. It's about empowering each of these nations to do it themselves. It's not about an individual from America jumping over there and getting it all organized and walking away. It's about getting that empowerment on the ground with them so that they can continue to grow it for themselves. And each country will grow a little bit differently because of the culture and the way the place works and the rules. So that we need to just empower that and make sure that they've got the capacity to do it.
It's been so interesting as I've watched the sport grow as a player first and then as a person in the sport, and having this platform that Selkirk TV has created for me. One of the things that I see that I think will be a massive moment in pickleball is as the GPF becomes clearly established as the governing body in the sport of pickleball, all of a sudden the ability of national and international brands to start to say, oh, pickleball is as authentic as soccer, football, I guess in a lot of places they refer to it as, tennis, table tennis, badminton, and that authenticity and credibility as a sport. I think that long before we're even part of the Olympics will be a massive moment for sponsors to come in, and God knows we need money to help make these programs and things go. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah.
It certainly does. I mean, sponsors, that's what's going to drive. You can only go so far with membership, membership revenue and whatnot. So in sponsorship, you need inventory, right? You gotta have things to sell, right? And a lot of that is going to come from tournaments and from league play and things like that. So again, this starting point, just like we did in the US, right? We didn't start off with, huge sponsors. It started with, initially the endemics, the pickleball manufacturers that, wanted to move product. So we see that that's kind of the roadmap that will happen, internationally as well. You get the endemics involved. Those sponsorships are not going to be huge, but it's a starting point, and then it's a gradual build. Where you're able to each year you're able to grow your events, and then you have spin-off events, and then now you start attracting more players. The bigger the events, now you're starting to attract the larger sponsors. So, the roadmap's there. I mean, we've gone through it. Australia's gone through it. Canada's gone through it, and some others. It's up to us to really, provide that roadmap and say, this is how we've done it. It doesn't happen overnight. So if everybody understands that it just takes some time. But again, we've got the plan, and we're making that available, and we're here to assist our countries. And like I said, I don't think it's going to take them as long as it took us, right? Because they're going to have that roadmap,
Sure.
to get them to where we are. So.
And it is exciting times. Like the next 6 months is very exciting. You look at us, we're the only organization that's managed to have an AGM, have member countries at it, have a conference, bring people together. We're going, this next one in November this year, or November or early December this year, is going to be another exciting time with hopefully double the countries we had this time. And I'm looking forward to announcements of new things as we move forward, as they start to get set into place.
Yeah, I want to just mention I was invited to your first global conference that was done at U.S. Nationals last year in November in Mesa, Arizona, and I had a chance to meet people from 18 countries around the world flew in to be part of that conference. And there were two parts of it that really impressed me. One was the fact that these people had come from around the world to be at that conference. And then having an opportunity to meet many of them and talk to them in depth, I was really impressed with the leadership that you guys are assembling in the GPF. That really sparked me to go, holy cow, we finally have an organization that's really able and capable of doing things. So I applaud the efforts that you guys are doing. I do want to ask you, there is a lot of the people that watch my show are in the business of pickleball. What message can you make, or is there any specific direction you can offer people who are interested in helping and see the vision of growing the sport as being critical to the business of pickleball, how they can help you grow the sport?
Well, I mentioned earlier, I mean, there's a tremendous need for equipment, so any manufacturer that's out there that has product or has a vision and wants to grow the game globally, we feel that GPF is the perfect partner because we've got access to the countries and the contacts, and we're more than happy to help facilitate. But beyond that, I mean, just not only the equipment manufacturers, but the court manufacturers, right? What we're seeing right now in a lot of countries are the converted courts, so our multi-use courts. You don't have a whole lot of dedicated courts yet, but neither did we in the U.S. not too long ago. We had the majority of the courts were converted or multi-use courts, and now that has shifted. Now we have more dedicated courts than we have converted, which is exciting. That's court construction, lighting, fencing, paint. Those are other countries, or sorry, those are other manufacturers that we would love to engage with and get them involved with GPF. Media companies, right? That have the ability to spread the word and work with GPF. Our doors open for them as well. So, I mean, we're a fairly new organization, but we do have the structure, we do have the contacts. So, we're open to having conversations with anybody that shares that vision of growing the sport with pickleball. We want to have a conversation with them.
And so I'm sorry, Jen, go ahead.
Right, sorry, I keep chopping you off, Paul. If you look at it the other way, I think, what can we do for them? You've got all these businesses out there. They're all popping up. We have them weekly, new businesses popping up in Australia. If they come to us, we're going to be able to help them get in contact with people and groups and countries that need that support. So, again, it's all about this collaboration. We want to build this sport that is really special for so many people. Come to us for help, and at the same time, help us along the way.
Yeah, that collaboration. And I'm, correct me if I'm wrong, but Global Pickleball Federation.org is the is the website that they can reach out to you guys at and start to make those connections. Is that correct?
Yes.
Perfect. Well, good. I've got to tell you, I think I know we're on the doorstep of the next big movement in pickleball, and sometimes I don't think a lot of people realize how game changing the global scene will make the sport, even in America. Which we all think that we've been doing this all forever. I could see our sport doubling in America as it gains international credibility and authenticity. I want to thank you both so much for joining me today on the show. We covered the time clock. Jen, you're a hero to have stayed up so late to be with us today. Justin, you got up early. Thank you guys very much for joining us on the Future of Pickleball.
No worries. Thanks very much, Paul. It's great to be here.
Thanks, Paul. It was great. Appreciate it.